Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
Alyeska Pipeline Service Company, sustaining Alaska's pipeline and its operations today and into the future.
Find a living in fisheries. The UAS Fisheries Technology Program offers online study from anywhere in Alaska, plus labs and workshops in many Alaska towns.
Is most likely a chum.
Find your living without leaving where you are. Fisheries Technology from UAS.
The National Weather Service.
Good Thursday, everyone. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with the National Weather Service. It's the 9th of March, and as always, we encourage you to stay up to date with your local weather information, no matter what part of Alaska you're watching from tonight. You can always give us a call at the Alaska Weather Information Line at 800-472-0391. That's a free call for you if you're in state. Weather.gov/Alaska is the easy way to get started with our overall website. You can narrow down your view by clicking on the map there, or if you like to start closer to home right off the top, if you're in the interior, the west coast, or the north slope, start with weather.gov/Fairbanks. If you're in southwest around Bristol Bay, anywhere south of the YK Delta, including the YK Delta, and all the way out to the Aleutians, the Alaska Peninsula, Kodiak Island, South Central, Prince William Sound, you want to go to weather.gov/Anchorage. And if you're in southeast, the Panhandle, anywhere from about Yakutat southward, that's weather.gov/Juneau. Any one of those places can lead you to the other places around Alaska you want to see. Give it a try. Bookmark your links there, but keep in mind in the next several weeks some of those bookmarks will be changing, so we'll let you know when that happens there and when that's a final deal. But pay attention to that. We'll have some announcements for you coming up. nws.ar.tv weather at NOAA.gov is a great way to reach your TV desk friends right here, including myself. You got a question about the weather, you got a picture you'd like to see on the show, I'd be happy to share that with everybody else. Take a picture of your village. Get all the kids there waving at us, and we'll share that there. And tell us about your weather, where you are. We'd love to share that and show people what it's like around your part of Alaska. Here's what's going on in northern parts of southeast tonight. White Pass still under a wind chill advisory. That little tiny speck of yellow right there is White Pass. And it looks like it may feel as cold as 35 below from tonight all the way through early tomorrow morning. About 9 o'clock or so is when we expect that advisory to come to an end. Of course, the wind chill is a combination of the actual temperature and the wind blowing and making it colder on your skin. And in temperatures like that, it wouldn't be too hard to freeze your flesh in under 30 minutes or so. So if you are planning to travel through White Pass, make sure you got an extra blanket or something in the back of your car. Make sure you let people know you're coming and going, and when you get there, let them know you're safe, just in case, and be prepared just in case you have to go a little slower perhaps through White Pass than you previously planned. So pack some extra gear there for the White Pass travel. Now up north, a little bit of a different story. We have a blizzard warning in effect for the Chukchi Coast, generally south and west of Point Lay. And around Cape Lisburn, it looks like it'll be some of the worst weather there. The winds are going to pick up from the southwest 30 to 50 miles per hour, gusts to 75 miles per hour. This is going to continue overnight and into tomorrow. With that, also expecting poor visibility, and through about 9 a.m. tomorrow, that blizzard warning should be in effect unless conditions improve a little bit faster than that. Everywhere else is under a winter weather advisory. In some cases, you may see a little bit of snow in the blizzard warning area there, again from Point Lay and south and west of that. Could see as much as 3 inches or so, but once you get up into the Brooks Range, you're probably talking about 3 to 6 inches of snow. And generally the worst weather is going to be in the passes, it looks like. The winds will be blowing as well, reducing visibility. South winds about 15 to 35 miles per hour will be possible in those regions. The winter weather advisories will go until noon. That includes areas from Barrow to Atkasuk and then into the Brooks Range itself and on either side out across the east. So some windy and snowy weather there with poor visibility, and again making travel conditions there tricky. Same rules apply. If you're coming or going, make sure you let people know that you're leaving or when you arrive, so everybody can know that you're A-OK, and take extra supplies if you're headed that way. All right. Hey, look. Cool map tricks. Let's try this one more time here. All right, Mr. Sean, I'm going to give you full control. Why don't you just go ahead and advance that map if you can to the next one. And here we go. Satellite pictures into motion. And you can see the ridge of high pressure is firmly in control here. The next click will make the maps go there if you're able. And out across the west, you can see that band of clouds across the western bearing, generally moving from south to north, wrapping around high pressure. The next round of loops will show us that we've got clouds moving a little bit in from the north and northwest around that ridge of high pressure across the Bering Sea. And then we have a low pressure system here across the eastern Gulf. This is kind of hovering just south of Haida Gwaii, directing a lot of that moisture into parts of British Columbia and the Pacific Northwest, leaving southeast in relatively dry fashion right now. Take a look at the loop one more time, and you'll see that really most of south central and southwestern Alaska and southeast are in that general offshore flow. So it's been full-on sunshine, and what a time for it. They're slowly chipping away at some of the snowpack that has been sitting across south central, southwest, and southeast. And southeast has certainly had a fair share, especially in the northern half this year. The clouds are aplenty across the interior, and one more loop will show us that the cloud cover across the interior has kind of been thickening up a little bit, it looks like, making it down to about the Alaska range or so. So if you've been trying to hunt the northern lights lately, probably haven't been having such a great time unless you can find that one lone clear spot. And it looks like those clouds will continue to pour in over the next couple days. Here's a look at the surface chart now. And high pressure is in charge of the interior, though it's what we call kind of a dirty ridge. And what that means is we have our ridge of high pressure, no doubt in finding that. But the clouds coming in make that dirty. It's not a clear blue ball of cold air this time. Also, if you're across places like Eagle and Tok out toward Northway, you've probably noticed that barometer setting's been creeping up the last couple days and overnight. Had some nice notes from our friend Katie out in Tok, and she said the last couple nights, I think, have dropped down to about 40 below. So no doubt you're feeling some of that cold out there, and that is one reason that really dense air mass is pushing down on that aneroid barometer and telling us the reading's up to 1,052 millibars by late this afternoon, as analyzed by our surface weather analysts there. So pretty big stuff out there, and of course that's a very important number for you aviators. 1,047 millibars out around the Norton Sound region. Otherwise, high clouds, but you can see a lot of clear sky across south central. This white here, of course, is snow on the mountains and even some of the lower terrain as well. An offshore flow blowing around the north and eastern Gulf Coast all the way out toward Kodiak Island. A beautiful picture there. Clouds moving in from the south across the western Bering and the Aleutians. And this right here, oh, I love the visible satellite picture, don't you? This is ice. All of this right here across the YK Delta into Norton Sound and up toward Kotzebue Sound. All that is ice and a little bit more clouds as you head northward. Also snow and blowing snow across the North Slope. And again, this would be where we have our blizzard warning out until 9 o'clock in the morning tomorrow. Here's a look at tonight. High pressure really doesn't go away much, but it does kind of wane in its intensity a little bit. 1,043 millibars, still pretty rough, tough stuff. High pressure there across the middle Yukon Valley, allowing some snow to sneak its way into the middle and upper Tanana Valley, as well as the Brooks Range, and then the Arctic coast. That's where really most of that will be. A possibility of 3 to 6 inches there overnight until about 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. For southeast, notice the pressure gradient here. Winds are going to be picking up. You'll see that reflected in your marine forecast here in just a little bit. Some precipitation out across the central and eastern Gulf, but really a generally clear sky all the way across the west coast. If you're following anyone that might be moving along the historic Iditarod Trail tonight or tomorrow, they're probably looking at a pretty good view, but most of the cloud cover will be east of that. And then out across the west, periods of rain across the western chain, colder air making approach for the Bering Sea. As we head into your Friday, high pressure still across the Seward Peninsula and Norton Sound. Generally light winds, but cold air here, of course. Warmer air is marching eastward. It's relatively warm, of course. And as that moves eastward, it'll probably stir up some more snow across the Beaufort Seacoast. The winds will still be an issue across the regions around Barrow and down the Chukchi Coast, with colder air slowly making a return. And then across southeast, if you've got snow on the ground, it could be blowing around there, but it looks like winds and generally clear skies will be what you're looking at. And breezy conditions for south central, but Not quite as windy as it has been, otherwise a generally clear sky there as well. Into Saturday we go, and high pressure is still sitting across western Alaska. The cold front working up and over that, moving snow showers back through the region. Behind that, the pressure gradient relaxes a little bit, but we still have some stronger onshore flow, it looks like, for areas around Barrow down toward Wainwright and south. High pressure settles into the Bering Sea. And it looks like the overall configuration of our weather pattern doesn't change a whole lot, but notice what's happening in southeast. Warmer, wetter air is moving northward across southern parts of the panhandle there. So we'll be watching for snow perhaps around Ketchikan, Craig, Klawock, and Hyder as we get into the beginning of the weekend. All right, let's take a look at your temperatures for southeast. 20s and 30s here for most of the panhandle. Lower 30s as you head into the southern panhandle. 28 around the capital city. Haines and Skagway, teens and 20s today. Valdez, 30, 28 in Cordova. 20s all the way around Cook Inlet into the eastern side of the Kenai Peninsula. 23 around Portage today. As you move up the road in the Parks Highway, you'll see temps back in the upper 20s into in the Tanana Valley. 3 below around Fairbanks. 3 in Eagle. 7 around Tok. A little bit cooler around as you get out toward Golcana, I should say 11 degrees warmer on that end. Then 4 below in Fort Yukon, teens for most of the Arctic coast. Clouds will really make a big improvement in those temperatures there if you're looking for warmer weather. And single digits in teens for the Kotzebue Sound region. Shishmaref 18, 12 in Nome, 17 in Unalakleet, only 8 today in McGrath. Temps in the teens and 20s around Russian Mission and out toward Bethel, 10 degrees there, 12 in Nunivak Island. Down toward Bristol Bay, you'll notice in southwestern Alaska that temps there were in the teens and 20s. Lake Iliamna in the mid-teens, 20s and 30s for the Alaska Peninsula. Sandpoint 34, about the same as St. Paul. St. George a little milder today. Also looking at those milder readings around Unalaska and Dutch Harbor, and 30s and 40s for the western and central part of the chain. Atka was 41. Overnight low temperatures tonight look like this, anywhere from 15 to about 30 below or so across the middle and upper Tanana Valley. Fort Yukon 17 below. The North Slope warmer than the interior tonight. Looks like single digits up north around Kotzebue Sound, lower to mid-single digits there, also above 0. 5 in Nome, 4 in Unalakleet. Galena looking at 8 below. And then down to southwest, temperatures above 0 as well. It looks like 2 in Bethel, 24 around Kodiak, 20s and 30s as you head out toward the Alaska Peninsula and the chain in the upper 30s. South central single digits, 10 around Cordova, 7 in Anchorage, and low to mid-teens for southeast. High temperatures there tomorrow will also be a little bit on the cool side, mid to upper 20s for many in the Panhandle, 31 in Yakutat, 31 around, looks like, Whittier and down towards Seward, 32 for Homer, 26 or so for the Anchorage region, about the same up the Parks Highway toward Talkeetna, mid-teens around Fairbanks, a little bit cooler out toward Tok and Northway, 10 around Fort Yukon, teens and 20s up north, Kotzebue Sound, teens and 20s for you, Shishmaref 22, a little milder in Nome, Norton Sound temps in the lower to mid-20s, Galena again around 21. Bristol Bay temps in the mid to upper 20s there, the Alaska Peninsula in the 30s, and the chain around Adak and Atka in the lower 40s, 35 in Kodiak. Let's go on to flying weather now, and here's your IFR conditions up north. No big surprise there with blizzard conditions around the Chukchi Coast and the Beaufort Coast. Watch for snow showers there around the Brooks Range. Looks like clear sailing for the Gulf Coast region all the way out to the west until we find IFR across the western end of the chain in St. Lawrence Island. By the afternoon, watch for some changes. You'll see a little bit of improvement across the northern slope all the way up to almost Atkasuk and Barrow. MVFR conditions will be changing across the Chukchi Coast and the Beaufort Seacoast throughout the day. IFR extends all the way through the Bering Strait, St. Lawrence, St. Matthew, and out west with conditions around Nome to Norton Sound and southwest looking pretty good as far as ceiling and visibility goes. Southeast remains okay as well. Here's your pass conditions. We'll fly through these. Anaktuvik Pass, MVFR to start with VFR conditions there. We expect similar readings around Adigan Pass. Most of the Alaska range is going to be VFR. Let's take the tour. Lake Clark and Merrill Pass look to be VFR. As you get up toward Rainy Pass and Windy Pass, things look okay there. Watch for MVFR in the afternoon for Windy Pass. Moving on to Isabel Pass, MVFR conditions develop in the afternoon. And we'd expect conditions in Mentasta Pass to change over to MVFR by late afternoon as well. Remember all those clouds we saw in the north? That's what's going on there. Tanita Pass, VFR conditions. As we get toward Portage Pass, VFR conditions by the afternoon. And Chilkoot and White Pass look pretty good as well, but it will be cold if you're going through White Pass by land or car. Now, as you look at freezing levels, the surface freezing line's way down south, but notice that warm air that's made its way up into the Chukchi Coast. Levels there as high as 2,000 to 4,000 feet. And down across the central and southern Bering Sea, levels as high as 2,000 to 6,000 feet across the central chain, the surface freezing line being overrun by that warmer air. So we'll keep an eye on this area here in the coming days for some changing weather if there's something coming through. Let's take a look at icing potential. That's going to be hit and miss, generally above 4,000 to 6,000 feet, let's say, across areas generally north of the Alaska Range and then through the Tanana Valley and north toward the Beaufort Seacoast there. A light to isolated moderate's possible across the Bering Strait and up toward the Chukchi Coast. You'll find a better chance there. Across southeast, hit and miss. So we've got a lot of dry air in place, so it's going to be hard to come by, but keep your eye on some of that clear ice. And then out across the west, above 4,000 feet. West of the chain, light to isolated moderate is possible. The jet stream shows a kind of an interesting configuration. High pressure is in charge of the Bering Sea. We know that already, but that's what's going on at the surface. Aloft, this is now blocking a considerable amount of real estate and ocean state from any incoming weather system. So anything that's moving in has already moved up the north side of this and is now descending. That descending northerly flow is certainly pushing that cold but very clear, dry air our way. It's grabbed onto a little bit of moisture as we saw in the satellite picture, but overall, it's kind of throwing some elbows out there and keeping things out of the way. Low pressure is moving across the central Pacific right now, 100 to 120 knots out in the west, and then slamming more moisture into the Pacific Northwest. That flow is just south of our region, so southeast kind of missing out on most of that for right now. 9,000 feet, we see a similar story. High pressure is firmly in control of the weather out across the west coast, with that north and westerly flow reaching the Chukchi Coast, bringing active weather there. And then across the Gulf here, we see several areas of low pressure, but the general flow is still kind of keeping things out of the way here. Wind speeds across the interior, generally northerly and northeasterly, 20 to 30 knots. At 3,000 feet, low pressure is a little bit further south. We've got a little bit more of a southerly flow reaching into southern parts of southeast, and that will become a player as we get into Saturday a little bit more. Otherwise, very dry conditions across the coast. Westerlies moving across the interior, 10 to 25 knots. Now a look at turbulence shows us that below 6,000 feet, there still could be some chop, some of that reaching occasional moderate across the north and around Yakutat. West of the Alaska Range into the Killbuck Mountains and Wood River Mountains below 4,000 feet. Watch for some occasional moderate there. And on the northern end of Kotzebue Sound and Kobuk and Noatak Valley regions below 4,000 feet. Also a little bit of chop across the central and western chain. That's a look at your aviation weather. We'll take a look at your marine maps here in just a few minutes. Stay tuned.
Two dogs and one really big cat.
Hey there, stargazers. I'm Dean Regas, astronomer from the Cincinnati Observatory.
And I'm James Albury, director of the Kika Silva Pla Planetarium in Gainesville, Florida. We're here to help you find your way around the sky. It seems that there are dog people
And cat people.
Well, we have something for everyone this week. We have two canine constellations.
And one giant feline in the night sky.
And if you're not a dog or a cat person, maybe we can convince you to be a Jupiter person.
Let's show you. When you face south after dark, you'll see the brightest star in the sky, Sirius. I know that Jupiter is a little brighter, but it's a planet, not a star. But don't worry, we'll get to that later. Sirius is the nose of the big dog constellation Canis Major. He is one of Orion's hunting dogs. Oh yeah, there's our main man, Orion, over to the dog's right.
In fact, you can use the three belt stars of Orion to find Sirius. Shoot an arrow from the belt to the left and it'll take you over to Sirius.
Sirius is one of our closest stars. It's only 8.6 light years away.
Okay, that's still like 50 trillion miles away, but still it's way closer than most stars out there.
And Sirius is really two stars orbiting each other. A big white star that's twice as massive as our sun, and a small white dwarf star that has almost the mass of our sun, but is only the size of the Earth.
Higher in the southern sky is another bright star called Procyon. Now get your imaginations ready for this. Procyon and the star next to it, named Gomesa, make up the entire constellation Canis Minor, the little dog.
Wait, two stars, that's it? That must be a hot dog.
Anyway, Procyon, like Sirius, is a white star that's close to the Earth, relatively speaking. It's only 11.5 light years away. Also like Sirius, Procyon is a multiple star system with a white dwarf star in tow. To find our friendly feline constellation, we need to face east. Look for a backward question mark of stars for ahead and a triangle of stars for the rear.
Friendly? Ha! This is Leo the lion, most feared creature to ever walk the forests of Nemea.
That's in Greece.
Yes, and Leo was finally taken out by none other than Hercules. After strangling the beast, Hercules fashioned Leo's hide into a coat. So if you ever see pictures of Hercules wearing a lion skin, that's what happened to old Leo. Hey Hercules, that is definitely a bold fashion statement.
But here we see Leo in more peaceful days, lying cat-like in the skies. The brightest star in Leo is called Regulus, and it means little king.
Now that we're heading into spring, you'll be seeing the king of the starry skies, Leo, nightly. We're now looking a little into the future, and it's the night of March 13th at 10 p.m. When you look east-southeast, you'll find the waning gibbous moon above a really bright star.
That star is actually the largest planet in our solar system, Jupiter. Like we mentioned earlier, Sirius is the brightest star in the sky, but Jupiter as a planet outshines it almost twofold.
And Jupiter is getting closer to us each night this month until it reaches opposition, the closest point to the Earth, on April 7th. Right now, Jupiter is over 420 million miles from Earth, but it's such a huge planet that it shines its reflective sunlight all the way to us.
If you miss seeing Jupiter near the moon on March 13th, go back outside again on March 14th. The moon will appear just below and to the left of Jupiter. Plus, you'll want to note a bright blue star in the area. This is called Spica, the brightest star in the constellation Virgo the Maiden. So, dog people, cat people, and planet people, we have something for everyone this week.
Not to mention the moon.
Oh yeah, that's right. The moon will be hanging near Jupiter on March 13th and 14th.
And you can see the two hunting dogs of Orion, Canis Major and Canis Minor, as well as big cat Leo the lion. And it's all there when you keep looking up.
Time for a quick check of the sea ice edge. Not a whole lot of changes here in the last couple of days. We still have our general flow that's bringing ice and cold weather across the west coast. There are a few areas that have a little bit of a slightly more open water, but there seems to be a very thin layer of ice out here across some of those areas that open up fairly quickly. So if it does open up, it seems to be very brief and then refreezes, as you would expect. Concentrations there over 80%, colored in white, and that is a large part of the Bering Sea. And right now it doesn't look like it's going to make it a whole lot further south in the next couple days. Let's move on to southeast marine forecast now, and you'll notice the northerlies there still going strong up around the northern parts of the Lynn Canal. Some freezing spray, certainly a possibility in the next 24 hours there. 12-foot seas up north, 4-foot seas as you get into the Clarence Strait on a northeasterly wind at 20 knots. The offshore wind continues across the outer coast. Stronger winds up north around Yakutat and outside of Cross Sound. It could be some significant gusts there, so be careful. 15-knot winds south of Sitka and toward the Dixon entrance with a 5 to 6 foot sea. On Saturday, notice that winds diminish a little bit across some of the outer coast, but up north, 40 knots there, 9-foot seas around the Lynn Canal, 25 to 35 knots on the inside. And then the offshore flow continues 30 knots up and down the outer coast. Seas come up to 10 to 12 feet from Sitka down toward Craig and 6 to 9 feet up north for Saturday. So wind will still be an issue for many as you look at southeast weather forecast in the coming days. For south central, you'll notice that we've got a very light and variable wind from many locations here. Not much of a significant wind at all inside of Prince William Sound. 2-foot seas there, 3-foot seas as you head through Cook Inlet, 4-foot seas over the Barren Islands all the way out into the western Gulf, northeasterlies east of Kodiak Island. Inside Shelikof Strait, a northerly wind with a 2-foot sea there. For Saturday, winds still don't change a whole lot, but you'll notice they come up a little bit south of Seward and Resurrection Bay, northeasterlies 20 knots with a 4-foot sea. 8-foot seas east of Kodiak Island, northwesterlies west of the Barrens, light winds inside of Cook Inlet, and northerlies 10 knots with a 2-foot sea inside of Prince William Sound. Around Bristol Bay, you'll notice northerlies there are light as well, 10 knots, otherwise northeasterlies on the Pacific coast and down the Bering Sea coast, 15 knots with a 3 to 5-foot sea. On Saturday inside of Bristol Bay, 15 knots from the north and east. Those 15-knot winds continue down the Bering Sea coast with a 4-foot sea, 6 to 8-foot seas in the Pacific with a northeasterly wind at 20 knots there across the northern Pacific coastline. For the Aleutians, winds should be fairly light as we go through Friday, especially in the central and eastern chain. 15 to 20 knots there with 10-foot seas south of Adak and Atka, southeasterlies across the western chain, 12 to 13-foot seas on a 30-knot wind, again from the south and east. For Saturday, winds will change a little bit more. You'll get that east and northeasterly flow bending around high pressure up to the north. That's going to bring us 7-foot seas across the Adak and Atka region. Otherwise, 5 to 6-foot seas across the eastern chain from Nikolsky to Unalaska, and 20-knot winds for Kiska and Attu, with seas there as high as 14 feet out in the west. Across the west coast, winds will be from the south across St. Lawrence Island, 20 knots there, southeasterlies over St. Matthew with 11-foot seas over the open water, northerlies around the Kuskokwim Bay over the ice, and light and variable winds around the Pribilofs, 10-foot seas with 10-knot winds with a 4-foot sea on Friday. For Saturday, expect a westerly flow to become fairly light across St. Lawrence Island. Otherwise, northerlies for most of the central and eastern Bering, anywhere from 15 to about 20 knots or so. You'll see 5-foot seas around St. Paul and St. George, as well as St. Matthew Island there on Saturday. For the North Slope, we'll watch for winds to be strongest as we go through Friday and Saturday across the Chukchi Coast, 25 to 35 knots there. Remember, blizzard warning is in effect there until tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. And then south and westerly winds will be fairly light across the Beaufort Seacoast, 10 to 15 knots there for Friday. On Saturday, expect the winds to diminish a little bit more. Still have that onshore flow for Saturday at 20 knots though for the Chukchi Coast. Southwesterlies north of Barrow, and 20 knots for the Beaufort Seacoast. Again, blowing in from the west across the region on Saturday. Let's recap your weather tonight. A blizzard warning is in effect across the Chukchi Coast until 9 o'clock. The worst conditions seem to be south and west of Point Lay. Cape Lisburn may also have some of the stronger winds. Winds may gust up to 75 miles per hour. And visibility, of course, will be diminished. There may be some light snowfall accumulation, but a winter weather advisory is posted for just about the rest of the North Slope and the Brooks Range, where 3 to 6 inches of snow is more likely, especially in the passes there, and the winds will be blustery, reducing visibility. White Pass, you're looking at a wind chill advisory until Friday. For wind chill values that could be as cold as 35 below for Friday afternoon. Again, generally clear skies for South Central and Southeast. Have a good evening. We'll see you again here tomorrow.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.